Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Morrison, Acting Senior Curator in the Department of Manuscripts. On behalf of our department, I would like to welcome you to the Getty and to this evening's lecture by Donald Jackson, who was invited here in conjunction with the exhibition, The Art of Devotion in the Middle Ages, now on view in the Manuscripts Gallery in the North Pavilion. From a young age, Donald Jackson sought to combine the use of ancient techniques of the calligrapher's art with the imaginary and spontaneous letter forms of his own time. As a teenager, his first ambition was to be the Queen's scribe, and a close second was to inscribe and illuminate the entire Bible. His talents were soon recognized, and his ambitions ultimately fulfilled. While still in his 20s, Mr. Jackson was appointed as scribe to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, where he was responsible for the creation of official state documents. And 13 years ago, Mr. Jackson was named as the artistic director of the St. John's Bible, the first handwritten illuminated Bible of its scale in over 500 years. At the onset of the new millennium, St. John's University and the monks of St. John's Abbey in Collegeville, Minnesota, were seeking to ignite the spiritual imagination of people throughout the world by commissioning a work of art that illuminated the world today. Mr. Jackson was chosen to oversee the team of scribes, artists, and craftsmen who worked with him to handwrite and illuminate the 7-volume, 1,150-page book on parchment. While Mr. Jackson worked on the original manuscript, he also served as the artistic director of the Heritage Edition, the fine art edition of this Bible, which has been acquired by Yale University, the Vatican, the Morgan Library, and many other institutions. Newsweek called the St. John's Bible the American Book of Kells, and libraries and museums around the world, including the Library of Congress, the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Minneapolis Institute of the Arts, and currently the New Mexico History Museum in Santa Fe, have hosted major exhibitions featuring portions of it. Just over a year ago, on May 9th, 2011, Donald Jackson completed the final page of the St. John's Bible. This historic occasion was celebrated in Jackson's studio in Wales, and later at St. John's University in Minnesota, and on the Today Show with Matt Lauer. This evening, he will be discussing the influences and techniques that informed the creation of the St. John's Bible, and how, in turn, its making provided insights into the work of the past. I am honored to welcome Donald Jackson for his lecture, The St. John's Bible, a Contemporary Illuminated Manuscript.
Thank you, and here I am again, it seems, but it's about 35 years since I was in Los Angeles in August to give a talk. I didn't know who was going to turn up, and it was an off-the-cuff arrangement by friends in the LA area, and it started quite a big ball rolling eventually. But it started here. Not in New York, but in Los Angeles. And the thing is, though, that when I get in a position like this and I walk up towards this podium, and I don't do a lot of talking about the Bible project, for the simple reason I've been working on it. We only just finished I just left Minnesota on Sunday, after having worked on the final pages of the printing of the last volume in the 7, Letters and Revelation. So it's all very fresh, and I'm sort of still, my mind is still elsewhere. That's my excuse if I need any more. But really, I just thought, and while you're getting used to my voice, I can't not say this because it's a long time since I last repeated this, but across the hill on the neighboring hill is Mount St. Mary's College and University. And when I was there many years back, I found myself walking up to a podium not unlike this and thinking to myself, how the hell did I get myself into this position of having to stand up and be so nervous and fraught and talk about something which I actually do. And so being me, as I stood up, the first thing that came into my mouth was, when I walked up these steps, I thought, how the hell did I get myself into this position? And of course, the majority of the attendees at that point were nuns and other people from the thing. And then I said, well, but since I'm at Mount St. Mary's, perhaps I should rephrase that. Dear God, how the hell did I get myself in this position? So, having got the cheap laugh and got started, the payback time came when, at the end, down the steps came this formidable intellectual president of the college, another nun, and she came straight to me, and I thought, oh, this is it. She's going to tell me off for this irreverence. And she said, Mr. Jackson, I'm so glad that you decided to begin your evening presentation with a prayer. So here we are, talking about the Bible all these years later, so somehow or other, something must have worked out right. Well, let me begin by trying to just outline what my idea for this evening is. I, like you, I hope, have been enjoying the exhibit as presently the Art of Devotion, and some really sparklingly good manuscripts, some of many that are here. So what I want to do is to try to give you a few tools to look at those and to help you experience the manuscripts, both old and new, by looking and feeling to experiencing manuscripts. Why am I struggling for words? It's because the temptation when you look at a beautiful exhibit like you have here at the moment is to be in awe of it. And that awe, in my experience, creates a barrier. And I would like to invite you to be more familiar and to give yourselves permission to be critical, to be to look for errors, look for humanity, look for joy. Give yourself permission to have an opinion about whether the thing is joyful or labored or a production. Many manuscripts were produced by workshops. Most were after the 1250s. They weren't written by monks for other monks. They were written by tradesmen like myself, producing things very often in batches, hurriedly, watching the clock for a price. There was a demand. They were also a commodity, bought, sold, and so on. So try to put that into context, and then I'll move on to what looking at old manuscripts did for me, how they helped me understand my craft. And I'll deal with that in more detail as we get going. But what I want to start by doing, first of all, this is an experiment. If you don't mind, I'm going to try it. And that is, I want to go back to where I started as a kid, playing with a pen and ink on paper. And this is where the St. John's Bible begins. It begins with pen and ink. And I want to just sit down and make a few letters in a few minutes and invite you to remember what it's like. Those of you who are calligraphers and have tried calligraphy, I want you to engage with the action. So I'm just going to try this. Let's see what happens. I'm going to walk over to that table there, and providing the microphone and everything else doesn't fall off, let's see what happens. Now, I'm imagining that the camera will start to run at some point. Experiment, very red and very ink, quill pen, ordinary paper, glasses. Am I to hope that the camera is rolling? Thank you. So why am I wanting to do this? Well, because so many of the manuscripts they're not done in very deliberately and slowly. They're done painstakingly. Pains are taken, and pain is a good word for this. Anyone who's ever tried it, try writing for 5.5 hours at a stretch. You'll find out where the pain is mostly after a while. But those are things. But the pain mustn't show. But I suppose if I was just to keep it simple, they were done fast. They were done as fast as they could. No printing presses. You were having to produce these things. I say you, I mean the person who's making it. So, the quill is a wonderful instrument for this, because it's not just a pen, it's also partly a brush. So, first of all, I don't know if this is coming out. Is it working for you there? See the ink? You see, you can use it like a brush by filling in, but also speed. A letter does not finish where it does not finish here at the end, like that. It finishes here. It's like a plane coming into land, hits and goes. It's a bit like sort of rubbing your head and your tummy at the same time, writing and talking. But I don't know why I didn't think of that before I started. However, you'll see that before long, I've got something happening here, very quick. Let's just see this. Let's just make... And if you look at some of the letters in the exhibit, you'll see exactly this. Let me load that up. See how it can be. So it's finished. Next one, next one, next one. This one, even if it was, let's make it into a D. And these are big. These are big letters, actually. But if you do it so like this, O, or you do a T in these Lombardic things, I'm making my point. This I'm hoping will breathe some life into what you look at. You can obviously, if I wanted to sit here and doodle, I could do it all night long for you. But likewise, some of the more. This quill is a beautiful, fluent instrument for that. As it said, it's also good for drawing. It may not on this paper draw very easily, but it would on vellum. All those Leonardo drawings, Michelangelo sketches, this. Not a steel pen, not a fountain pen, but a quill. And you can tell by the mark it makes. It's very fluent, easily, and it influences the way you work. It unleashes from within you life, because it's capable of grabbing the moment. You put that on there, I put that there, and it's there. If I did that with a steel pen, I'd go like that, and by the time I got here, there would be nothing. So the tools, the materials, they all go into our sensibilities. And they're there in order to capture an image. to put it there as fast as possible, as grabbing the second, the moment, the breath, the energy. Look, I thought of something this afternoon, and I thought of it in this context. Venus Williams, that means something to probably everybody. I only see it once a year or whatever it is at Wimbledon. What do I remember? I said, shut up. But no. But think of that, and that is what calligraphy should be. But it's concentrated into a tiny amount. So that is in there. No noise, but sometimes I can tell you that the energy can happen, and it's like that. Now, what happens when you put that energy into a mark? Well, I'm mixing metaphors terribly, I understand this, but something else happens. When she hits that ball, she isn't carrying it all the way to that chalk line so it can just touch it and push up a puff of dust. She's let go. You are the ones that see it happen. You record it. You experience that moment. But she has hit it. That's the best she can do. When I write that, the best I can do. When somebody plays a note and that note goes out into the air, it is no longer the musician's, it is yours. This all is a partnership. It's a partnership between the artist, the athlete, and you. So you have to make your contribution to it. And so what this is partly starting to do is to invite you to take responsibility for what you bring to what you see in the museum or anything else. I know I'm rambling rather a lot, but that's what this is all about, really. And by sharing what my experiences are, then you must bring yours to them. Thank you. I'm going back here, and I'll just take a quick look at my notes, and I'll also explain a little bit, whilst the technology catches up, about what I want to do next with you, to talk about. I'm going to show some slides of some old manuscripts, tell you what to look for. I went around the exhibit this afternoon and quickly took down one or two notes about, that I would like you, if you get the chance when you come back, to take a look. See if you see what I'm talking about. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we'll see. If we are in action. Yes, we are. This is a picture taken a couple of 3 or 4, no, it's probably 6 weeks ago now. In my studio, Sarah took these, and like her fingers on there, these manuscripts were meant to be held in the hand, for the most part. The great big the great big books were meant to be put on a stand so that many people could read them. Your job, when you look in, I would suggest, is when you look in a case in a museum, since you can't turn a page, you can't pick out that book and turn it, experience the book as it was meant to be, held in the hand and turned, you have to turn and catch the light. Let the light catch the gold, but you have to turn the pages by turning yourself. You have to engage on with it. You can't do it by touch, but you can physically, and by eye, move and make those pages turn. Now, what are we looking at? Before I get on to that, I want to make sure I know where I'm going with this. Yes, let's stay with the old manuscripts for now. What I'd like to think you should do would be there are many things to look at. But what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should do would be to, what I'd like to think you should But the surface is the important bit. The scribe has to write on that skin. These are commodities, remember I mentioned, bought and sold, produced very quickly, very often. This is probably written in the 1430s or something like that. Rather badly done. I'm not blaming the scribe. I can agree with him if he was going to blame the skin, because it's terrible. But also, there's something social about this. These are part of people's everyday life. They were less secular in those days, even though, and this is a rather good example, you see this little chap here. The book probably was made for him, and he seems to rather enjoy it because he's got his religious, art of devotion down to a fine art, because he's drinking a glass of wine while he's reading it, and he's sitting rather comfortably in what would be a make-believe garden surrounded by flowers, and it looks as if he might have drunk rather a lot of wine in some ways. But the point is that the work itself, take a look at the skin, it is having, that painter is having to struggle to get the paint to lay on there. This background would have been gold, the thinnest application of gold possible, because that would have added a lot to the price. So it's watered down powder gold, it washed in and around, and also I would make the point that it's really there a lot of the time to sort of gussy up the whole production, because if you look at these, you see the block, you see this where the ink has spread, where it's been done very fast. If you look down the margin, you'll see that although they've tried very hard to keep and justify the lines at the end, sometimes they've gone big and still fallen short. Sometimes from here I'm finding it difficult to actually pick them out, but you can see yourself where they've run short, where the actual technical challenge of writing to get it all to look nice and justified and neat is not being reached. And I suggest that that person who was writing that was in agony, because the vellum is so rough. Look at this. This is not just bad work. This is because the skin, I mean, it has to be said, if you're trying to do, that's probably an S, but underneath that. But you see, look at how complicated that is. And the slightest wrong move, and you get that. So there is something about the text that's not that good, but you can see again the way these. Now, I just make a point about the St. John's Bible here. The St. John's Bible is written in English. This is Latin. Latin has an awful, I keep pressing the wrong button, but Latin has lots of get-outs for calligraphers. If you're running shorter space, you can do this abbreviation. I don't quite know what it would be. It could be an S. So you're running shorter space, you put that at the top. Most people reading that, there wouldn't be it's not the vast reading public, this is a specialized reading public, would know what that meant. So you had the chance to expand or contract in a way we didn't, because there's very few things. There is skill in this, but it's struggling to deal with this skin. Take a look at that. It's so thin, the ink is bleeding through. So it wasn't the scribe's fault. You touch that skin, and the ink is feathered immediately. It goes right the way through. And so I'm going to say that that was a miserable experience for anybody who's writing it. It really has to be said. But again, it was actually gussied up by these very skilled, actually. This is a very worn-out manuscript. It's been used a lot. And it's old. So, some of this is worn. But I can tell that whoever did this was having a better time than the person who did this. And just a little thing in passing, because I'm going to talk about this with some of the manuscripts in the exhibit, some very bad trimming. Look how the design's been trimmed right off. because these things had a life. They're of many hundred years. I mean, it's now 600 or so years. And they'd be bought and sold. So one of the things that suffers most with books that were used a lot in everyday, the daily devotions, the edges go first. They get because they're fingered. And so to clean them up, a dealer would send them out to the binder, chop down the edges, make them nice and straight, rebind them, and then sell them on. Now, if you look in the exhibit, you'll see a number of examples where these very fine manuscripts have just been sent to the binder and the heads have been chopped off, gone straight through the design. The binder doesn't look inside the book. He's only concerned with covering it, the outside. So trim off the edges. Doesn't matter that it's gone straight through raised gold, any old sort of things. That's something to look at. Look at the skin. Look at the trimming. You can look for the way the lines are ruled. I'll talk about that in a minute. So I think this was made more valuable or saleable by adding the decoration. Now, one of the things that you would have had to have done would be to have smoothed the skin in some way around. I don't think you could paint on that easily. You wouldn't get that result on that rough skin. So it would either have to be burnished down to made more smooth so that it can accept the paint from a brush, because that was brush painting. So just imagine trying to paint on a velvet cushion. It wouldn't take. You could paint on something smooth and you'll get a coverage, but not on that. Ideal for writing, although it's too thin. So I'm asking you to look, right? First of all, you've seen the way these things are done. They're done relatively fast. They were planned, and they were also production. They were doing the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. One of the things about St. John's Bible, the problem was, in illustrating it, as it were, during the illuminations was, there was no pattern. I wasn't following a pattern. Nobody was following a pattern. They had a space. We had a space to fill. And each one was engaging with each story and each incident with having to start a new iconography. The iconography was established, hundreds of years of usage for a lot of these things. And believe me, when you know what you're doing, you know it goes a lot faster. And I'll talk about that. But of course, mistakes are made. And here's the famous one that's in the Walters Art Gallery, where this piece here was missed out by the scribe, but there is where it belongs. So a piece of rope is attached to it, and he's saying, we'll pull this up and we'll put that in there. So that's been going on for quite a long time. People making mistakes, scribes making mistakes. And I discovered one, by the way, at least, in the exhibit. So I'll tell you where to look for that afterwards. So mistakes. So what do you learn from manuscripts? You learn from old manuscripts. You learn humility. You see that they struggled with technique, with skin, which wasn't good. You see them struggling with a pen to keep going even, just to keep going when everything's going wrong. And you learn too that people make mistakes and they get out of them. You learn an attitude. You learn to not to take yourself too seriously. You can see this in some of them, there's fun. And you can see, too, how things are made. And this is a reconstruction, which a lot of you are familiar with, where you start off at the top with a sketch drawing. You first put the gold on. Gold you put in first because it makes a mess. If you put down the size, you put that on, you put the gold leaf onto it, and it is a little bit messy. You see here, you don't bother cleaning it up because you know you're going to put another coat of paint just in all of those pieces. Then we put first this, the faint wash, then the richer color, and then next you have all the difference between that there and this is a dark outline. Just go over the pen, outline with the pen, cleans up the gold, you're not aware of all of the messiness, and then finally a white line on top of that to give it some sparkle. So you learn technique from looking at the past. Learn to look at certain trade techniques to achieve certain results. You also learn to look, and this is a relatively inexpensive sort of manuscript, not a top quality production, not a great luxury item, but beautifully written. Written by somebody who was having a heck of a good time, who really loved what they were doing. Because these are so fluent, handsome, but I can't find two O's that look different. Look, anywhere you look. I can't find one now, of course. There, and here. They slide one into the other with effortless ease. And just confident, whereas one of them, I'll just give you a detail. I'm not looking at the decoration because, again, that is fairly factory produced, very competent. You see the white line, how that helps, that I pointed out. Gives it that nice thing, little bit of white, dark, white inside, gives it, it's a trick. But anybody who did that L, look at the sweep of it. Think of that Venus William moment there, woof, going through there, and just doing it, and then sliding right into the next letter. So you find joy, you find effortless, you find skill, something to aim for, and all of that comes from looking at old things. And this is the quick little story about my introduction to it. As a boy, as a 16-year-old, I picked up a postcard in a museum, and it was in Scotland, and it was a postcard with an illuminated initial on it. When I was in my teens, I went to a very respected local library which has wonderful manuscripts. It started off as a theological collection, and I wanted to copy this manuscript, and they told me to go away, that they weren't allowing anybody within a million miles of their place with paints or anything of that kind, and certainly not somebody who was 18, because it was only for postgraduate students. So I went away, and I copied that onto a piece of vellum in gold leaf, and then I went back again. And I said I'd like to copy it. And he said, well, I thought I told you that we didn't do that. And I just gave it to him, my illumination. And after he got over the shock, because he thought I had cut it out from somewhere and stolen it, and he said, who did that? And I said, I did it. And to his credit, he said, well, I don't know any scholars that come in here that could do that, so I think you had better have permission to copy it. And so I did. So he allowed me in. So something I said about, in connection with this presentation to people wanting to say something ahead of time was that I was actually thrown out of a museum when I was 15 for whistling. And 5 years later, I was exhibiting in it. So you've got to be careful who you throw out of your museums, and for what reason. But what did I learn? I learned about detail. I learned about delicacy. I learned that if you do it too thick, it will look like a Disney cartoon. I learned about simplicity of color. The red, blue, a couple of reds and blues, pale green. What else? Very, very simple. Restricted palette, strong design, fine details. That was something that I took away with me. Also, and that went into the work. Later, 30 years later, the sense of knowing where to leave something alone and not overwork it, which is not medieval but different. Learning to play with the gesso, and even stirring my fingers into it to make the shapes, and rubbing the quill into it to get texture. All of that I started off by looking at old manuscripts. And again, these royal documents that Beth mentioned earlier. Because just like in the Middle Ages, there were different functions for things. That letter M that I showed you with the two figures in it, that's probably 13th century. But that was a legal document. It wasn't a religious document. It was King Malcolm, M for Malcolm of Scotland. It was a charter. So it was a state document. What's the connection? The connection is, if you want to do something that matters, you do it in a way that looks like it matters. And that's the basis of the Bible thing. You could say, I was raised as a Methodist, which means fairly simple Christian faith. Pictures and illuminations were not encouraged. I mean, they wouldn't have been even if it crossed anybody's minds to challenge it. But very simple. The word was what mattered. The word alone was good enough. And I can quite see that. But I also see that if you want it to be believable and want to reach out, then there are justifications for doing it in a way which does just that. That makes something attractive and stirs the mind and the imagination and wants you to look into the words more. So that is, a lot of those tools were learned by looking at the past. I've got to show this. I've shown this before to several people in this audience, but it's a sort of popular request, really. This is where, you learn, I also said you learn not to take yourself so seriously by the mistakes. This is a formal sort of book of signatures for people who do feel quite important. And so one of the things I did was to, steal from a Victorian era, not just the Middle Ages, but, the kind of Victorian self-importance that one saw. And so I did this book with each of the pages with a decoration ending with a jewel painted on it. And then, of course, what I then did was drop the brush. And so instead of onto paper, which I couldn't scrape off, I then decided not to put the jewel in here and to put it here. And so it ended like that. So I've got to say I always enjoy looking at that, so, I don't apologize for repeating it. But so I would argue that I learned that from the past, from a way of looking at things, a way of feeling about the stuff. And so I think I'm now going to have the lights up for just a quick introduction to the Bible itself. I'm going to just talk about it with you. Should I put my jacket back on while I'm talking about the Bible? I think I probably should. I think so. And if I'll just have a quick look at the notes. I'm not sure what we arranged to do at this point. I'll tell you quickly. Oh no, yes I will. The art of devotion. If you could remember this, I'll just give you one. If you look at, there is one page called St. Bernard Reading in that exhibit. If you take a look, and you take a look at the 10th line down on the left-hand side, you'll see that the scribe has written the line and then reread it, or has it been checked, and there's a spelling mistake in it. And so he scraped it out, one letter. So it starts with a P, and then there's a gap, and then the next letter. Obviously, the bit that went in the letter that went in between shouldn't have been there. And I wonder how many of you noticed that. I'm surprised that since all these calligraphers that are here tonight, you didn't, but there it is. That's one of them, and there are other things too, but I just mentioned that just because they're there to find, and you can find them if you look. Right. Now, this just doesn't feel quite right. Am I supposed to be going straight into the Bible now, I wonder? I think we'll see. It's difficult to talk about this project, actually, because think about it. Elizabeth said, how many years, but in fact, from my point of view, as you heard, from a child I was sort of toying with this idea, and I know that up in Ghost Ranch in New Mexico in 1994, I did a sample page for a Bible as my dream project. The next year I met up with Father Eric Hollis in November in Chicago and put the idea to him of having a Bible at St. John's, or actually Gospels, I claim. I said Gospels, but he says the Bible. And the price didn't change, you understand. It was the same for... that's my story, Eric, and I'm going to stick to it. But actually, it wasn't until April 1998 that we formally got together and signed a contract to produce this. Now, since then, well, I don't know how many years that is. You're better at math than me. But just to put it into perspective, I think it was something like, let's say 16 years from, the courtship period, etc. And this August, Mabel, my wife, and I celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. And if you think of that, 50 years of marriage, 16 years of it, 1/3 of our married life, of quite a long married life, has been spent living with another person in the place called the St. John's Bible. So if anyone was ever to ask me to do another one, I think they'd have to deal with Mabel first, not me. And of course, let me just see where I am, please. Yes, the lights were supposed to go up then, but it's all right, I've forgotten. And so we're having it says lights up, pause for Bible, and introduction of the Bible. And now I'm going to just, I suppose, you can all see me, I suppose, although I'm stuck behind this thing and I like to move around a bit. Okay, just a couple of things. How was it started? First of all, again, the old manuscripts influenced me. The Winchester Bible is a big Bible, and it's in 3 volumes for convenience. Something like this. Now, something like this means something. What it really means is to get a top quality calfskin, you can't go bigger because it stops being top quality and it starts to be tougher, thicker, less flexible. The surface starts to get coarser, as you saw on that slide, and who wants, 16 years of misery writing on that? Actually not 16, it didn't take that long to write. It was written over a period of about 5 years or 6. So to find the vellum, but why this big? Because you could make it smaller and it would be more convenient. But the truth is, it belongs to that tradition and was perceived as that by me as a show Bible. Not show as in showy or show business, but a demonstration of faith, a demonstration of conviction. This is worth something. It doesn't matter what religion or what denomination of that religion. It is worth doing and has a substance. You can get a Bible, you can get it on CD, you can get it on, any electronic form and in many different variations, all of which have value. But this is a value of its own. That's where it started. Started with, this is worthwhile. This is inviting you to come in. It is a statement. That's why the size is as big as I could get it inside the quality that was needed for a top quality writing surface. Why good materials? Because, as I said, pain, why, if you're doing something in misery and pain, then there is no joy. This has to be speak of joy and of celebration. There's some pretty horrendous stuff in that Bible. I mean, really. But you know what? It's just, there's horrendous stuff around us in everyday life. And that's why that text and those texts, this mixture, a bundle of different texts from different periods and influences, why they have a meaning, because it's like that now. I mean, I find myself saying the last time I did speak in public about this, it's like the National Enquirer, for goodness sake. It's from one side to the other. There's all kinds of, sex goes right the way through it, of all different variations. You've got human love. You've got betrayal, hatred. You've got genocide, you've got anything, it's all there. And you also have love. You also have love and trust between people and the willingness to sacrifice for others. That's there too. So it's all very interesting stuff. What a challenge. How to organize it. Very briefly, the text was on a disc, came out of Los Angeles, California, which is the New Revised Standard Version of the text, which came on a disc. I only wished we'd been sent the right disc, unfortunately, because it would have helped a lot of problems. But basically, I chose just a regular font, a San Vito, malleable font, which imitated the text. I just sat down and wrote the text in the weight, and I was trying to do this thing of measuring here, measuring about at what point does that written text, texture, the weight of it, the feel of it, the legibility of it, which speaks for the importance of the text. Italic, no, doesn't do it. Italic for the poetry, yes. Italic for some of the quotations for the Psalms, yes. But the actual substantial text had to be something more formal and have more weight. And so that I decided and wrote with a pen. Write it with a quill, yes. You may have variations, but you have more chance to maintain the spirit and flow of it when you're writing with a quill, because it feels great. When you put that quill onto a skin that's been beautifully prepared, and by the way, Sarah Harris, who's sitting here next to Mabel, prepared all of the skins in the Bible, bar a few herself. And when you hit that surface with a quill that's sharp and the ink that flows, then that lifts your spirit. That goes into the work, that feeling. All of that text was organized on a computer. Copied my script, basically just copied the average number of words, letters you could get onto a line. I wanted two columns. I wanted it nice and strong, like the Winchester Bible, so that you could have quite outrageous, designs, quite powerful, but were held in place by the architectural quality of the text, of the columns of text. They are the most important. The others play off them. And so that was done, flowed through, had to guess. I had a brief saying, we want this, we want half a page here, a quarter page there, we want you to do this. It's very difficult to explain the briefing process, actually, and probably not the right time tonight, because this is all about the doing. But it had, first of all, to be organized, and basically I just sat with the computer guy. I don't know how to work computers, so I certainly don't know how to do Quark, and which is how it was all done. And he would flow the text through the columns, and I'd say space here, space there, let's have a space here. Guessed it, I had to guess it. There wasn't design beforehand. It wasn't, the designs weren't there and then the text built around it. The text was there and the illuminations were put in there. I wish it had been twice as many years, so I could have done all of it. You'd end up having to do it twice, you see, design it all. Now that's where, in the past, it was all pretty much organized. You just copied what somebody else did with minor variations. You can really get motoring when you do that. It's quite a different momentum. So there's a lot of reinvention. There's a lot of talk going on too, and I'm going to have to push on a bit. But, I'm just giving you a flavor of it. The challenge was quite big. The challenge too about the relationship between the people, the theologians and historians and art historians at St. John's and me. They had no idea what I was going to do. No idea. And the first page I did send, they were still arguing about it 3 days before I left for the States with it rolled under my arms. I mean, this was the beginning of computer, for me and for them, of bouncing images back and forth across the Atlantic. It was possible, but they still, at that point, I was still doing color Xeroxes, putting them in the mail, sending them off, and then a piece of Scotch tape would have slipped in the mail, and it would be on one corner, and I'd get this lengthy email back saying, "We don't understand the significance of the pale grey rectangle in the top right-hand corner." So, it had its difficulties, as you can see, but we got over them. Okay, perhaps we could have the lights down, and I'm going to rip straight into this. We're now approaching the, well, we did start a wee bit late, but is this the right kind of lighting for slides? Not sure this is. There we are. Perhaps, can you see this well enough? Is this fine? Okay, because it seems bright here. So, I'm not sure. That is the beginning, is it? Yes. So you see the general horror of the big white space, and then you see the column make, and the challenge of trying to hit that right-hand side, working with Roman, working with English, because it's a lot easier for Izzy Plodwinski up here, because he starts on the right and works this way. So Izzy Plodwinski came from Israel to work in the studio because I wanted all of the books which were from the Hebrew tradition, which were from the translation, straight from the Hebrew translation, to be on each of the pages, so that was a constant reminder of the origins of the text here. On the left-hand side, it would be in English. And I did not write these pages, this, or this, or this. I was writing this special treatment here, as we call it. Special treatment is just a rather ugly expression, really, but it meant really to highlight certain texts. So you have interpretive illuminations, that is to say, take a story, work out how you can tell that story in terms of an illumination, and try to hit the right point that's being asked for by the theologians. And then you had these featured texts, and you had some marginal ones, which grew out of the experience of doing it. I realized that some of these stories were so disparate, so disconnected, and yet they were connected, that I started to do marginal special treatments to try to move the story along and try to make the story more available to people. Anyway, that gives you the sense of the hand, the scale, the size of it. You see, the other thing I don't really like, Elizabeth, I'm talking here about my introducer, is how in the Middle Ages anybody managed without masking tape. It's a serious thing. I have no idea, because you're using a lot of liquid, And these things are constantly under tension. If you're doing lots of, there's a lot of wet there, as you saw me doing earlier. But if you do that in a small enough increments, then it doesn't distort the page. But if you sand on the other side of it, you'll find that it's quite a lot. It's like plowing. It's like a plowed field on the other side, because once it's been wet and then it dries, it shrinks. And so there's a real close personal relationship between you and that. And that would be Brian Simpson writing those letters there, because I had 5 scribes in addition to myself. Brian Simpson, who used to be at college with me and is even older than I am, and did better work at 74 than he did when he started it at a mere 69 or whatever it was, or 66, and then there was Sue Houghton, who is a calligrapher in England. Then you had, and she and he and Sally Mae Joseph and myself were the first started off doing all of the text. When we got to a certain point, I realized we were never going to finish it in time. So I had to look for 2 others, asked 4 people to come, and chose 2 of them. Generally choose themselves. It isn't just a question of whether they're good at doing calligraphy or not. It's whether or not they can play in a quartet, whether they can agree to enjoy doing the text in their own way, but keep conforming to that. Countercultural, asking somebody to do the same alphabet as somebody else. That became a real eye-opener for the people who worked on it, including myself. A really wonderful experience to work and play the same tune together. Marvelous. Different from just playing your own little solo all the time. Anyway, that rhythm, that skill from 5 people. I've missed Susie Leeper from Edinburgh, and Angela Swan. So they were mostly women working. And what we found was people could not do more than couldn't really, in modern life, we're probably not doing more than a page and a half a week. It took between something like 5.5 hours for one person to do a 2-column page. But you can't sit down and do that for 5.5 hours. It's just like standing up and playing the violin for 5.5 hours. You've got to concentrate on every single note you're making so that it stretches over a full day. And on average, because of modern life, everybody's got families, stuff like that, and other things happening, we were really not getting there until we doubled the strength of the team. But that there is something Sarah put together, and that's all of us. And that was randomly chosen from different pages. It doesn't make any sense. Don't try and make sense of it. It's bad enough trying to make sense of the Bible without trying to follow this. But she just pasted together the 6 people's work. Well, at first glance, which is about all you need, they all look alike enough. There are experts here, and I certainly can tell the difference. But not every time and not at once. But it was designed in such a way that no 2 different people did the facing pages. So every spread was allotted to the same person, so that their writing is facing their writing. So by the time you turn the page, you don't have a direct comparison. And that was quite a project, actually, just logistically. And these people would come to the studio every 6 or 7 weeks, bring what they did. I would go through it minutely to see if there were ways they were diverging or where they weren't enjoying themselves, where I could tell they weren't, even after all this time with this skill, where they weren't enjoying, say, doing an S. Try fitting an S into the same height of letter as an O. There's only one ruled line at the bottom, no line at the top. You have to have that measurement here. As you go, you have to feel it right, and that quill is individually cut, trimmed. 6 different people, and they've all got to somehow or other strike the same note all the time, like a harmonic. And that happened. That's a rather interesting word, isn't it? I don't know how that happened. No, it's been chopped in half, and I don't know, or something of that kind. There are something like, I forget how many of those. I think I wrote it down. Capitals, large caps. There's something like 738 of those from beginning to end. So that was fun. I did all but half a dozen of them. But that I did at the very end. The spaces were left. But I used that as a sort of, almost like you would add seasoning to a basic dish, so that I could have fun, balancing colors against each other. And we shared that out, say, what do you think color should go there? And then I would sit down and go right the way through them all at once, and relatively quickly, as you've seen. But there's quite a lot of fun and invention throughout. There's something, for every book in the Bible, there's something of that kind. They tend to vary, but they're similar text in the end. It came down to something like this. So that you have an iconography which settles it. You can't have everything jumping off in different directions. Right, I'm going to speed up now, move towards the end. Other things, there you have something, I guess I did right, which is you have text, poetry within the text, and then you have a different kind of italic. That's sort of a reduced sort of, or elongated version of this, with more space between, and then the marginal quotation or a refrain. There's also writing where you see that, the speed of it, where I didn't stop to retouch. You just do it, and you do it fast, because it's an admonition, begging. It's an entreaty, and that has to be inside you when you're writing it, so that when you're talking about wrath, you put that across there, and then you feel that as you do it. This is represents all the other artists in the book who in the books. One is this is Suzanne Moore. A lovely thing where she decided to do the word Christ in different alphabets and languages, and then you have Thomas Ingmar, of course. We'll come to a bit of just representation. You've got sorry, I got caught between giving you a list of the contributors and looking at that. Yes, you've got Diane van Arx, who's here this evening and was here this afternoon demonstrating, who has done some lovely pieces in one of the volumes. You've got Thomas Ingmar, Suzanne Moore. I asked those people to do it because I liked their work, and I thought they could do something worthy of the project. And also, who am I missing? Hazel Dolby, thank you, who does also lovely work. But I haven't, this is not about showing you that the whole, ticking boxes. This is about the experience tonight, but they have made the book what it is. And this was that first thing that I told you about, that they were wanting me to do differently. One of the fears was actually that, what was I going to do? What was I going to do? I was given a one-line brief to do this, which was this is the first illuminated page in the New Testament. And it said it should encompass the whole sweep of Jewish history. Because, well, no, that is how it starts. But that was the only brief I had. Just everything in Judaism in one page. But the thing is that in the New Testament, it starts off by establishing a family tree. And I could never, as a child, understand this. This begat business. And I didn't do it. But somebody said to me, there are people here who are no better than they ought to have been in this little group. Some weren't married to each other, some, etc., etc. And I was thinking, that sounds a bit familiar. That could be anybody's family. Certainly it could be my family. So I was thinking, that means, it has a meaning for me. And anyway, in the end, I then said, well, what about the women's name? Who are these guys married to or not married to, as the case may be? And so the committee came up with the names of the women attached, so that the men were in the Hebrew, and the women were I wrote in gold. And there you have, of course, Abraham. You have Hagar, who is the mother of Ishmael, if I got that right, and of course looked upon as the father of the Arab nations, and is looked up to, and is the link, as far as Islam is concerned, with the same ancestor. So just by one little word in Arabic, I was saying all families. This is not just this family, this is my family and your family. So I could tell you a story about all of the illustrations, but I won't, because we don't have time. But all I can tell you is every one of them has a story, many stories behind them, and many thoughts. But they all end up to being, does it work? Does it have a feeling? In this we have, I was trying to say several things. This is taken from a Buddhist mandala. This is a cosmic mandala from Buddhism. This is DNA, which is saying we're all one. What I'm saying is there may be all these different religions, but they're all leaning towards and reaching out towards one thing, that which is beyond ourselves. And that was what I was trying to say. And in the end, they saw that and accepted it. And that has got to be said at St. John's. People at St. John's have been very supportive. And from, we haven't had lots of disagreements. They've had certain things where they say, no, this is not saying what we believe, here and there. And I've said, okay, that's my job, is to try to do that. It's not my job to be a theologian, but it is my job to believe. It's got to convince me. Because as I was saying to a smaller group this morning, if I don't believe in it, how can I expect anybody else to? If I don't believe in what it's trying to say. So there it is. And the fragments of that relate to that. And I'm going to move on. One. Of course, mistakes. And we've also enjoyed the company and skills of Chris Tomlin, who's sort of the youngest, probably. I don't know if he's younger than Sarah. He's not. He was at one time the youngest. Certainly acted like he was the youngest. And would you agree to that, Sarah? Yes. There's not many of scribes you find swinging from the actual rafters in the studio. He used to do that. Anyway, and so he did this, and I think this is not one of my mistakes. Everybody's made a mistake like this. It's the most easy mistake to make, is looking up and reading. It usually makes sense. Say to you, shall not, I don't know, thus says the Lord. Say to all Israel. That sounds sensible, but actually it's not right. It should be say to King Rehoboam of Judah. So you see, you look up, you look at the wrong place, and you write the wrong line. And then you've got to face either scraping all of that out or doing what we did. Hands in the air, sorry, got that wrong. Is this okay? Right. Also mistakes, because this is not oil painting. I can't do a canvas and then think, I don't like that, put it on another canvas. All this illustration was done with all the writing around it. Not everyone, some writing wasn't there. But there is writing, either side of it. There's writing behind it. There's maybe even another person's illumination behind it. Sometimes there may be even two illuminations behind it. And then you've still got to keep a steady nerve and get it right. You can't, normally, like an oil painting, scrape it off or wash it off or this. But in this case, I literally did. I thought Chris got carried away with too many butterfly wings. Actually, that's not quite true, because I actually designed it so I put a picture of a butterfly wing in these different places, but afterwards I didn't like it. So there you see me doing the surgeon's job of scraping it off. So that's another kind of way of getting rid of a mistake. You just actually remove it. And here you see how the technique of using a compass point, compasses with gold in it, so you can put the sharp end right into the head of something, but not actually in it. That's a little slip of thick vellum cut from an edge. So I'm actually pricking into that so that when I remove it, there is no hole in the head, if you see what I mean. So that's a little trick. And then the whole idea of this. And this is quite an interesting thing. This is Joshua. This is Isaiah's vision of the temple. And at the point that God says, who will do this job for me? Who will take on this job? And you could do a lot of pictures, but you would never beat just simply writing what his reply was. So after doing all of this, the basic question here is, I won't go into the story, who will do it? And he says, here am I, send me. And I found interesting that, because I just wrote it. And then I thought, what did I just write? I just wrote, here am I, send me. And for just read it, you've got to read it, and then you've said it. So just putting the words there, the whole key of it was, he's saying, who will believe and who will follow and who will do the bidding? I'm not preaching now. I'm just saying the words, just simple words, put the point, make the point without any picture. But they also make you say them. Then you have this is the 7 days of creation, and I'm just gonna say, put your seatbelts on. I'm just gonna go for it now. So I'm gonna go through these things. Fractals, the 7 days. This still holds up for me as an idea, because all of them are scientifically okay. This is the Ganges Delta viewed from a satellite. The division of the waters from the earth, and so on. All of which sits. This is Thomas's wonderful handling of the Ten Commandments. He is not a believer, a Christian, but he finds that Ten Commandments extremely harsh and demanding and dictatorial. So he couldn't do that in calligraphy. His response to it was to do it in type, more as you would have instructions, do not, do not, do not, as you see on any notice board or whatever. And he took it that way, made it very powerful. And a rabbi who saw this, and quite a sort of, I don't know, certainly not orthodox, but he was certainly fairly a serious end of Judaism, and he kept looking at this, and he said, there is a quotation which he gave to me, which I'm sorry I can't repeat because I don't remember it, but he said something about the fact that the word of God was not something that was just words on a page, but something you could actually walk around and go, basically, I can't improve on saying that. You can walk around it or through it or so on. And he had that feeling that that's what it was, that the words would penetrate, you can move around them. They were not just fixed. And so he was hitting the button. And his response to it was that. This is another artist who worked on the project, who's an icon painter, Aidan Hart. And I designed it. Did the design? It's Moses looking out towards the promised land and not being able to go himself. So he's looking across with regret, and so on. He's carrying in his hands something here, the fragments of the tablets of the law, which I actually stole from Thomas's and broke it up and put it there, and sort of painted the painting, and he painted the face on it, which is, he's very much a Greek Orthodox in that tradition, and a wonderful person to work with. So there's a combination of things. And then this doesn't mean a lot to me from here, but this is a response to this is what he was looking at in the next volume, in historical volumes, the crossing of the Jordan. And on the left bank, as it were, Egypt and everything that went with it, the symbolism and decadence, and they were fighting their way across and taking the law with them across into the promised land. And so that's how it progressed and worked out. And the iconography here is all, as it were, instinctive, picking things that would happen before, and as I got on through the Bible, stealing ideas of my own and bringing them into the present volume and others. And also in the last volume, Thomas took some things of mine and put it into his, and so on. So there was a fusion. So there you have the progression of, as I say, turning your back on that which was before, the exotic and the actually seductive, it turns out, religions of the Egyptians, and then carrying on to the Twin Mountains and into the Promised Land. And then taking more on this Egyptian things I took from a frieze in an Egyptian tomb, using these Egyptian details and these Egyptian paintings and putting them into these weird pictures, not weird pictures, I'm saying, stories of strong women, women you wouldn't want to meet on a dark night, who having nicely settled you in bed with a glass of milk, bang a tent peg through your head into the floor. Problem solved. Why have a big army fighting the guy? He's dead already. You know, that's the story. And also another where a woman again throws a stone off the top of the wall of the city and dings somewhat of a thug leader and kills him, just like that. That's my brush, just painting a delicate little gold chain around his neck, just to emphasize the fact he's falling, and so on and so on. There we have Samson pulling down the roof timbers, but again, I'm using this same thing of the Egyptian tomb, and then again, we come to the point where it says, and the city was basically went up in flames, and then I just took just a regular everyday scene from the Middle East, where rockets are going off in all directions, and some young boy, whoever side he's on, is running in the same way that they were running and dying 3,000 years before, and that's what makes this Bible so strong. It's appropriate to time. It absolutely is. Not, my creation of it. Here we have where Chris has done a lovely job of, and in this is the only time where the insects and so on were used to convey the message. You've got Israel is being formed. It's being formed with difficulty, and at this point, people just divvying up and they're splitting up the bits between each other, and the ants here, the carpenter ants are taking out their share, and somebody else is taking their share, and so on. So the actual creatures are doing things. So I've got to get moving along Persian jewelry, Middle Eastern, I think homage to Klimt here, but not really, because this is the story of Esther, who had actually, I think, she had two sides to her. She did actually quite like all of this, but she was also a Jewess who knew that this was really not the way to go. That so she humbles herself before God in order to get his help to save her people. And so, wisdom. This is a picture actually from a photograph of an old Palestinian woman in the 20s or 30s, and I took the photograph and had it transposed. And so we're nearly there. We're coming in, bringing in imagery from the Holocaust, from we're just doing it. It's not just the Holocaust, it's every day, it's in any number of countries. I just give up on it. This one was from Pol Pot. These skulls were discovered. That is from Iraq. Sorry. This one here was taken from Iraq. It could be an American soldier. These are bones from, Africa, where people are still killing each other, and we're also doing the same to our planet, in my view. We are creating skeletons and heaping them upon each other and things. But the message of this is that there is hope, that there is still hope in the rainbow, because I will put my spirit within you and you shall live. So that actually, that is the message of it, is that from even the worst of things can come good. And so here we are, me painting on the final stretch of the last few images. This is me. I work a lot like this, work with torn paper and painting on top of it, getting images. This is me looking for microscopic images of disease, destruction for the four horsemen. And that's how that turned out on the page. I won't tell you the story of it now, just have to look too much. I've got oil rigs in there, sure, and I've got tanks. They're the modern cavalry. Tanks, oil is about resources. That's what was going on in the Old Testament and in the New. I know this is Revelation. Fighting for what there was between each other. It's here, and there is also nowhere to hide, by the way, because that's the other message in the Revelation. The story of the woman, this again is me, but me painting. This is the woman and the dragon, not the most well-known story, but she is horrified at the thought of the devil tearing her newborn child from her, and the devil is thrown to earth, and as he comes down, he comes down from the sky, and I did feature here a nuclear power plant. It happens to be near to St. John's Abbey, but there's nothing personal about it. It just is that it says in the scripture there was nowhere to hide, and that's one thing. If ever there wasn't a definition of nowhere to hide, that is what that is. You only have to look at Japan, and you see what a mess just one nuclear reactor does when it goes down. And so that I took to be the message. But finally, a message of hope, where you end up with a new Jerusalem, a new world. Interestingly, I found out from this that heaven is not in the sky, but on earth. That heaven is on earth. That's what it says. So that then begs the question, well, wait a minute, what are we doing to this earth that it's supposed to be heaven, So there are big issues that can be, not necessarily religious ones, that can be brought out from it. That's what's kept my belief in the project going through. I can't explain all of this to you. It does look pretty good in real life, this one. And just the last slide, just to bring a note to you, as soon as I do this, could we have the lights up, please? And there's a close-up of that. That's relatively small. But if you look at this here, these strokes, these marks, they're not done laboriously. The whole of that page was done when I did those marks. it's that Venus Williams moment. You set the whole scene, and then that goes on there. So that's what I would like you to. Could I have some more light, is it please? And I can see people. Hello, still here. Yes, now we're here now, and that's a whole chunk of patience on your part to have stuck it this long. But I did want to carry you right through to the end of this, except for the fact that it isn't finished. Because when I delivered it, and when it was finished on the 9th of May, was it? What was it? 19th of May. Yeah, 9th, whatever. I wasn't happy with that. I didn't think it had enough action. So what I've done is, on the computer, created some more details. That has printed in the facsimile. So it's called the facsimile. I shall be imitating the facsimile. One of these days when I go back to St. John's and they find out that I haven't finished it, I will have to finish it. You're the first to hear in public that this is my second thoughts. And so, but I will plan to go there, and I'll finish the details on the bottom of it. But going back to it all, there is certain risk in it. There is a lot of risk in doing things like this. You set up these things, these spaces with all the work. Some of these have literally 4 other illuminations, and you have to go do something like that, because it's got to be fresh and come from here for it to reach you. So it's now got a life of its own. This project, the Bible, aside from the little thing I just said, it's finished. That's nice to have third thoughts, but I don't think they'll let me anywhere near it after that. But certainly Mabel won't. But the thing is that it's now out to you. It's to whoever sees it, whoever shares it from now on forever. And it's not to do with me or the other artists anymore. It's what you make of it. It's what you make of the facsimile, which is in fact a work of art in its own right, I would say, because it's individually made and it isn't the same as the original. It's meant to be what it is itself. So it's now up to you. Now, I've run out of time. I've gone over time, over your patience, and I just want to say thank you to a couple of people. I want to say thank you to Mabel, because I haven't... Because aside from the other 2/3 of our married life, she's had to put up with quite a lot, and she's given me every bit of support that made it possible for this project to be done. And also to the other artists as well who contributed to it, and a lot of support goes into these things. I also thank St. John's, because they had the guts to commission something that they didn't know what was going to turn out like. They gave their trust, and that is very rare in this day and age. And so I know most calligraphers here would give them a good applause, if nobody else. And lastly, thank you to the Getty Centre and the folks here for helping tonight to make it possible. It's just such a lovely pleasure to be here, and what an asset to Los Angeles. Amazing. And come back and see the exhibit and see if you can see more next time. Thank you. Thank you for coming.